listening to the Patriot Nation Podcast.
All right, welcome to another edition of the Patriot Nation Podcast. As always, your guy Pat Lane here with my man Matt St. Jean, and tonight we are joined by a very, very special guest, my guy, your guy, our guy, Keagan Stiefel. Keagan, what's up, sir? Welcome back. We're happy to have you here.
Yeah, it's been a while. I went from, we're talking like 4 years ago at this point, but weekly co-host to now once a year I hop on with you guys. So I'm enjoying it. I'm excited to get this thing going.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. Yeah, it's funny how it started. I mean, it all started around this time, right? When Spags and I had the podcast, and you were on kind of doing your wild sheet with all information for everything and everything like that, and then you came on just at draft time, and we were like, this guy needs to be on the show all the time. And so then it was me, you, and Spags for a while, and then it was just me and you for a while, and then we
were just talking about it off the air, but like that's the business,
Yeah.
People are in and out, they're all over the place. Pat's the one mainstay here is since I first discovered Pat's Pulpit, I knew the name Pat Lane, and you're the mainstay, man. So
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I would say burned is potentially more synonymous, obviously.
Well,
but yes, I understand what you're saying. In the
I'll throw
podcast
you a
game,
bone there.
in the podcast game, Pat Lane, Pat's Pulpit. My favorite part about Pat's Pulpit is that people think it's like my site because they're like, your name's Pat and it's Pat's Pulpit, right? And I'm like, yeah, no, that's Pat, like Pat's Patriot, like Pat Patriots. And like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And I'm like, I appreciate it, but
But you could just pretend it's you.
I absolutely could. That's true. They wouldn't know the difference. You're right about that.
Yeah.
No, when you have first timers coming in, you can pretend to be whatever you want.
That's right.
They have no way of knowing.
That's right.
If the world is whatever you tell them it is.
That is correct. That is very correct. So, yes, big things going on outside of the Xavier, Texas playing game going on right now. I mean, like,
right in front of me.
Oh, of course, me too, as well. By the way, I am doing a thing. I decided I am betting the underdog money line in every single game all March Madness.
Sure.
Small. I mean, you know me, Matt. Like $2 a game. Like I'm not out here betting like crazy amounts. But I'm gonna do some research. I'm gonna do it all. I'm gonna all in. I bet all the 16s, everyone. I'm doing everything. And so we'll see how it plays out. I'm gonna keep some stats. We'll see what happens. Right now I'm 1-2 with playing games so far. 1-2. Still in the negatives, but you never know. So
you have Texas in this one?
I honestly couldn't even tell you who the underdog was. I just picked the team that was plus. I just pressed it $2 and went. I don't even know.
It's a science. It's a science, folks.
So, anyways, all right. So let's get into here's the thing that everyone. Should we start where everyone wants to start with this, which is Stefon Diggs. Stefon Diggs apparently in Foxborough. The ground round, by the way, is coming back. I don't know if you guys heard this or not. The ground round is coming back. And unfortunately, it's not here yet. But supposedly the ground round is coming back. And so that's got to be the move. Next year, if the ground round is back, we got to take a free agent, a potential free agent to the ground round. But maybe we go to Red Robin. Maybe little Davio's. Maybe Red Robin instead. Maybe Davio's, and then you end up at the ice cream place and a Patriot place. Either way, Stefon Diggs in the building. I think this is a no-brainer move for the Patriots, don't you think? What do you think, guys? Keagan, I'll let you start off, Keagan, and then Matt, you can go. What do you think here?
I mean, I think it's easy to go either way on this thing. Like, if you want to make the argument that Stefon Diggs is too much of a headache, especially for a young team, a new head coach, an entirely new staff surrounding him, young players, like I said, you could make an argument that it's just not worth it because no matter if you sign him this year or for 2 years, he's not going to make a difference in you contending.
Right.
But I would make the argument that given what we've seen him do for young quarterbacks, it's worth it for the on-field aspect of it, where he helped develop Josh Allen into the best quarterback in the NFL last year, obviously. Not with him last year, but helped him get there. And then with CJ Stroud played really well in the front half of his sophomore year, and then Diggs gets hurt, and also everybody else on their team ended up getting hurt. They had an awful offensive line. But once he went down, it went downhill from there. So I understand that there are two different arguments to be made. For me, like, you're not good enough to really pass up on an opportunity to sign a guy who, despite coming off a torn ACL, is still a legitimate top 2 receiver on a team. Like, he's not a number 1 really most other places, but here he definitely would be. So I just don't think you could pass up an opportunity to sign a guy with that much talent.
Yeah, I know there's a question in the chat here, basically asking if they're not interested in, DK Metcalf for the character reasons, why are you interested in Stefon Diggs? And I think the big answer to that is the investment here. Stefon Diggs is going to be relatively cheap, which is why I'm interested. He's a high-risk asset. He's had his issues in locker rooms in the past. He's going to be 32 years old this season, coming off a torn ACL, and he hasn't had a 100-yard game since like October 2023. Like, there's some red flags here. Flip side, PFF numbers all still good. ESPN wide receiver ranking still really like how he played last year. Film people really like what he showed. And if he hits, you're going to get a number 1 wide receiver for, if he plays well, you probably sign him for another year after, or there's going to be multiple years built into the deal. You can have a high-quality receiver in your room that you can build around. If it doesn't, all it costs you is a little bit of cap space. So, as long as the character stuff checks out, don't let him leave the building.
Yeah, and I totally feel the same way. And Keagan, you touched on it earlier on Twitter, X, or whatever the app is called at this point, right? But that his attitude problems are a little bit overblown. And well, you actually said you don't want to say that they're not overblown, but I do think that you're right in the fact that it's. I'll just read what you said. I'm just going to read what you said instead of me trying to explain it. You just said I don't want to say Stefon Diggs. Yeah, I don't want to say that Stefon Diggs' attitude. By the way, it says it underneath there, but at Keagan Stiefel on X, the Everything app, it's all happening on X. I don't want to say that Stefon Diggs' attitude problems are overblown because, well, we've seen him throw fits on the sideline. I just don't think it's anything more than a desire to be successful, which is something a lot of coaches and teammates have/will be fine with. The Patriots don't need someone walking into the building alienating people, but if they offer him an opportunity to get a lot of targets, maybe he won't be such a headache. I can't think of any veteran options that could legitimately help Drake May improve as a player. Isn't that worth signing him in and of itself? Here's my thing, right? This is the way I look at it. I think you said that perfectly, in my opinion. And I think that the biggest point here is that we're looking at a guy that walked into Buffalo and instantly became the best player in Buffalo. And in my opinion, had a big part in Josh Allen becoming who Josh Allen became. You you went to it as well, where you said that, CJ Stroud was playing well at the beginning of the year before Stefon Diggs went down. Of course, everyone else got hurt too. Nico Collins was hurt. Tank Dell was hurt. Everyone got hurt, right? But I think, the point here is that he wants to win. He wants to play well. He wants his teams to play well, and he holds guys to a high standard. Now, am I signing to a 5-year contract? No, because I do think that it will sour at some point. But if you're telling me 1, maybe 2 years, sign me the hell up. And if he's not ready day one, so what? If he's not ready day one, that doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that you're putting a piece around Drake May that knows what it takes to be successful with a quarterback like May. Josh Allen, Drake May and Josh Allen are the same player, obviously, but it's a similar player or similar type of player where Josh Allen and Drake May kind of do the same types of things. I think that could be really, really beneficial for him. I just, again, let's not expect an all-pro receiver, but he's a professional receiver, and I think he brings the floor of the room up and the ceiling as well, and I think that's really important.
I think the faster people get it through their heads that No one is coming here that is expecting to win a championship.
Right.
And if an all-pro, a former all-pro, Pro Bowl level player is at the point in his career where this might be his only option, he's not still at the same level that he was at his peak. Like, that needs to be the first thing that fans recognize is Stefon Diggs taking a flight to Providence, Rhode Island. He knows in the back of his mind, not the same guy. Also, probably won't be ready for the start of the season. So understanding that, but also understanding that if he knows the level of play isn't going to be where it was, maybe he also understands that to give himself an opportunity to get another decent contract or to find himself on a team that's going to have a shot at winning a championship, he needs to be on his best behavior. So if he comes to New England and throws fits on the sidelines early in the year because he's not getting the targets he wants, gets suspended, whatever it might be. I don't know if he's ever been suspended, but there have been issues. We saw the blow up with Josh Allen on the sidelines. We saw it in Minnesota, throwing the helmet. It's little stuff like that. If he continues to do that for a team who everybody knows isn't going to win and doesn't have high expectations, it's almost like he's lighting his chances at actually contending for a Super Bowl in the future at the end of his career on fire. So if fans can recognize that he's not going to be the same player, and if Diggs can recognize that he needs to maybe be a little bit more cautious about the way he acts, specifically in front of the cameras, because we've heard, you'll hear stories if you're down at one Patriot place about guys who they do the same stuff in the locker room. They just don't do it out in public. So if everybody can understand kind of where they fit in this marriage, I think it's a great opportunity for both sides. If there's any aspect of he still thinks he's a number one receiver or fans still think he's a number one receiver, if the team still expects him to be that way, I just don't see it working out. But if everybody can be on the same page here, like you guys said earlier, don't let him out of the building. Come with a strong offer, and even if he does leave, make him really think about the fact that this might be the best place for me moving forward.
Well, then I think if you think about it long-term a little bit too, he's probably not a number one, I think the best case for him at this point in his career would be like a low-end number one wide receiver. That's if everything goes well with the recovery. But if you think he's still a high-quality number two by the end of the season, all right, well, you go into 2026 saying we can bring this guy back because we like the relationship we have in the building. We know what we're getting from him. And now we have a legit wide receiver too. And some other pieces around him, Pop Douglas. If Pop Douglas is your wide receiver 3 next to Stefon Diggs as your 2, you feel all right with that. And it's like, all right, now if we can draft someone into the 1, or now is the time where we go trade a first-round pick and try to go get a receiver type of thing. Okay, all of a sudden, that guy who you brought in not expecting to win a Super Bowl because, it's an organization looking to rebuild, a player looking to rebuild at the same time. The timing works. Just one season later, if everything works the right way, it can turn into something much bigger and better than that. I don't think that's the expectation people should have going into that, but it's possible. It's why you make these low risk signings, because the reward could be very high.
Right.
You might have mentioned it earlier, Matt. You at least brought up the idea of it happening, but this might not just be a 1-year deal, because guys coming off ACL injuries, even if they're ready to play, they're not the same. Like we saw Kendrick Bourne last year. He didn't really start to look decent until like week 14. It was very late in the season where he looked like he was even capable of running at full speed. You know what I mean? So it takes a long time for these guys. Diggs was obviously kind of a late season injury. It happened in late October. So maybe it's a 2-year deal, and that's the Patriots kind of playing their hand where they know, like, listen, you're not going to be what we need you to be in year 1. You need to give us that second year. We'll make a financial commitment. You need to make the commitment on years. Maybe that's how they approach it, because I don't love the idea of, like, let's give him $15 million guaranteed for 1 year, because I don't think you're going to get much out of him. You're not going to get your money's worth, and it's also not going to be beneficial for him because he's going to be going into free agency again, coming off of a not great year, looking to cash out, and now he's entering his age 33 season instead of his age 32 season. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's you scratch our back, we scratch yours. You got to give us that second year just to get you in the building.
Yeah, or it's even a third year. I mean, because we know how NFL contracts are structured at this point, right? You get basically 2 years guaranteed, and that third year is basically like, would you just get out of it for nothing, essentially, right? And so, 2, even 3 years just to give him something. And if he has a good second year, then he gets in a situation where he can say, nah, I'm out of here. And, or you might say, all right, we're going to move on and get younger. Right.
Right.
But it allows you to kind of to bring him in. And I think that makes a ton of sense. I think a 1-year deal doesn't really make a ton of sense because, like you said, when's he going to be ready? If he's not ready day one, we assume. And so then, we'll see. We'll see when he's ready, but it doesn't make sense to sign him for 1 year if you're going to have him for less of the year.
I think a big aspect of this too is kind of what I said earlier about just why is anybody expecting them to compete at all?
Right.
The job of Stefon Diggs is not to help them win football games, or at least it shouldn't be. It should be to help Drake May get better and help his fellow wide receivers get better. If he can do that without producing on the field, I'm fine with it. Spend as much money as you want to get Drake May, to get him better, and then to get a guy like Keagan Stiefel or maybe even Jalen Polk, get his head out of the gutter and give him a little bit of confidence and let him showcase the things that made him a second-round draft pick. I think we all saw, and I haven't had this discussion with you guys, but with a guy like Jalen Polk, physically, he was never a stud. It was never like he's going to overwhelm you physically. He was just a really good, smart wide receiver. And when you put him in the slot, he was able to overwhelm because he was so physical at the point of attack that, he could pluck a ball out of air and he could win those 50-50 battles. He lost all of that last year because he was playing in an inept offense with idiots around him who wouldn't run the correct routes. You'd have 3 guys within a 8-yard radius of each other, and Drake May has no idea who he's throwing the ball to. So I went off a tangent there, but if you can get Stefon Diggs in the building and to fix those issues, money well spent to me.
Yeah.
And when you mention Jalen Polk on this show, when we were talking about Javon Baker last year, I said the 99th percentile outcome for Javon Baker is a guy like Stefon Diggs. That's a day 3 wide receiver pick who was a little bit of a diva, but who has the talent, a little undersized, playing on the outside, but who can be a deep threat and, a crafty route runner. And, you hope that he can help those guys. And then there's a world where it's just, we've signed Diggs, we've got Mac Hollins, we've got Pop Douglas, we've got Kendrick Bourne. We're going to draft a receiver, and Polk, Booty, and Baker are just fighting for one job here because we just don't trust what we have in these young guys and it's new staff in the building. And that allows you to raise that floor. You just have to do it. You can't bottom out the way you did last year. The expectation is going to be to win more football games. You don't have to have a winning record, but get to 6 or 7 wins if you can. And, show some progress, have a direction, build around something tangible on the field just for the culture. And, Diggs can help you do that. And I will say, for all the culture issues with Diggs, his issues always were multiple years into a tenure with the team.
Yeah.
There were never issues in Houston last year.
Right.
And it was only when the money became an issue in Minnesota. It was only when I think there was just some personal stuff with he and Josh in Buffalo and just wanting to feel like he was more featured in an offense that was changing. And none of that's really going to be an issue. If he's coming to New England, he's going to get targets. He's either going to get targets or he's not good anymore. And who knows if he's even going to be on the roster in that case. So,
the talent for sure has outweighed the off the field stuff throughout his entire career. Like you said, Minnesota, it was money. Buffalo, they just changed their offense. He was no longer a fit. They weren't going to commit the amount of money that they had to commit to him for what he was going to be producing moving forward in the new system. And then Houston, obviously, it was never an issue. He was just there on the last year of his deal, and he ended up getting hurt. So in terms of talent and on the field, like I said in the tweet that Pat read out earlier, teammates and coaches just don't really care. Because if you're producing and the team's better for having you on the team, throw a fit. Yell at me in the locker room. I'm fine with it. If you're going to get us 4 more wins on the year, scream in my face every week. I don't care, Yeah.
And if you're doing it because you're trying to win football games,
right?
That's not. I mean, how many years did we talk about Tom Brady screaming at guys on the sideline? The passion's fine if it's in service of winning football games, which out of a couple for Diggs, they really all have been. He's feisty, he's competitive. He wants the team to go through him because he genuinely thinks he's the best option to win football games. And I don't think I want a receiver on the team who's going to think anything other than that. That's just how receivers and corners have to play in those positions. Keagan, speaking of things you tweeted, by the way, you were the one that had the stuff about connections to the Patriots coaching staff, right?
Yeah, so Ben McDaniels was the wide receivers coach in Houston last year. Josh McDaniels' his brother. And then Todd Downing was a tight ends coach in Minnesota in 18 or 17. It was a year that Stefon Diggs was there. So that's something that I don't know if everybody's been kind of on it, but for me, every time they're connected to somebody, I'm like, who is the connection? Because there was a quote from Mike Vrabel at the introductory press conference of all those signings last week where he essentially said, I don't know how to do free agency any other way. I'm going to trust what my guys know about these players and bring them in and then continue to develop them into the system that I'm running whatever year it might be. I don't think he wants to kind of fly blind and sign a guy based off talent. Literally, of all the free agent signings that they had throughout the offseason, which the numbers are getting up there. We're at like 13, 14. Milton Williams is the only one who's never played for a coach on this coaching staff.
Did Caleb on Jason?
Yeah, he played in oh no, was he just in
We
Las
played in
Vegas last year?
Jacksonville. Was Doug Marrone in Jacksonville when he was in Jacksonville?
No, he was gone at that point.
I think he overlapped in Carolina with Thomas Brown, maybe, but that's
offense defense. I wouldn't count that. So Chason is maybe the other one, but
yeah.
But he played in Vegas last year with two guys who came over who were McDaniels guys.
It's a year removed from McDaniels, so there are dots to be connected with all these guys, except for Williams and Chason, which that's a big number. If you look at any of the other teams, I don't have the time to be doing research on the Panthers signees, but teams don't really put that much of a focus into it. And Vrabel was kind of open about the fact that that's a big part of how they do things. And I think it's smart. We'll see if it's smart. On the field, if you're just running with a bunch of cast-offs from the Titans and the Raiders, maybe it's not a great idea. But if you feel like they fit the system that you're going to run and they can gel with the guys who are already here in New England, maybe it's a great idea. I would imagine that this is a smart way of going about it.
So my thing is, I actually did a little bit of research on this earlier because, after they signed the kid from Tennessee, the linebacker there, and his name's escaping me, Gibbons. I was just like, all right, every single guy is just coming from either Tennessee or Vegas or somewhere that has played for the Patriots, right? And so I said, okay, well, let's look at some examples. Let's go to Houston when the GM there went down. God's sakes, what is going on with me, dude? Nick Caserio went down, right? 2021, 4-13. 2022, 3-13-1, right? Signed a ton of Patriots players, ton of guys he's familiar with. Great, they stunk. Vegas, Josh McDaniels signed a ton of players that the Patriots had on the roster or had previously played for the Patriots or for McDaniels. 2022, 6-11. 2023, McDaniels gets fired halfway through the season. Brian Flores goes down to Miami in 2019. Signed a ton of Patriots players, ton of guys that have played for in the past. 2019, 5-11. 2020, they get Tua in the first round and they end up going 10-6. So they have a winning season. That's one of the 6 winning seasons, right? And so for me, we can look at these guys and say that, well, I mean, it's nice that they have some familiarity and they know them, and that's great. But okay, we're not looking at, in my opinion at least, and I don't think anyone's expecting the Patriots to do well, right, next year, record-wise. But if we're signing cast-offs from other teams, that, frankly, it's just well, we like this guy. He's a good locker room guy. Well, that's great. But again, there's reasons why these guys get to free agency. And so for me, I just it's fine. I don't hate it. But I also am well, what are you really doing? You're just getting the guys that you already know to come in. And so whatever. It is what it is. It's not the end of the world.
Real quick, I'd push back on that a little bit because 2 of the 3 teams that you named stunk right away when they signed all those Patriots cast-offs. And then when they got their own players through the draft in with the guys that they signed, and I think culture is so overblown, it's become a buzzword. But when you're able to establish, like, this is what we're looking for with the players who are already there, and then the players you draft on the back end of these signings of the cast-offs from the team that you came from. Miami turned into a playoff team. Obviously, they had the talent. They drafted well. They signed big free agents, turned into a playoff team. Houston turned into a playoff team, and they look like they're going to be able to contend for at least a window here. I don't know how long it's going to be, but after they stunk it up for a few years, they drafted well. They still have a ton of people from the Patriots organization still down there, and they got better. Vegas, am I going to put stock in the fact that they're going to get better now that, the culture is established and they're going to draft well? That remains to be seen, but they were better last year than they after they fired McDaniels than they were the year before. So I think right away, this is what I was saying earlier, where if you're expecting them to compete immediately, you're going about it the wrong way. If they're able to at least establish the fact that, like, here's what the message is, here's what we're looking to do moving forward, and then you improve on the back end of that, I think it's a good way of doing business. I get the annoyance of, all right, Jack Gibbons was a special teamer who just had a bunch of tackles in Tennessee. And is Robert Spillane a superstar linebacker? No, he's not. But at the very least, I think they know how to play in this system. And those are just two examples. But you have those two guys now expected to play a big role on your defense. And then if you go draft a linebacker, they're going to have two guys to learn from how to play this defense, what their responsibilities are. And if that guy's more athletic and just a better overall football player than those guys moving forward, once you move into that second phase of the rebuild, you have a better football team. I think it's understanding that this isn't a one-year thing. We're not fixing everything in 1 year. We're establishing what we want to do moving forward.
Well, and they were hoping for young players to develop and be key pieces for them last year, and it sounds like they didn't provide an environment for those players to actually do that. And, if you want to figure out really if the players you drafted are good, you have to put them in an environment where they can succeed, which seems like is the goal here. Yeah, I mean, there is a world where they're just swapping out bad players for other bad players who these guys just happen to be ones that Vrabel and company know, and it's not going to be a tangible result on the field, and there's going to be some real criticism coming his way if that's the case here. There were some criticisms with him in Tennessee, particularly with his coaching staff, that he's kind of too loyal to the wrong guys in that building, and that was one of the issues with why they didn't have success in the field anymore. If that's something with the players, that's going to be something that could be an issue here. Also, I want to go back for a second. One, Marone did draft K'Lavon Chaisson in 2020, which is important. And then also, there's a comment about Diggs being a slot in Houston. Mike mentioned this. I was looking at, I'm forgetting the name, the wide receiver tree, Matt Harmon, that guy, good wide receivers analyst. And he had some really good numbers for his grades of Stefon Diggs last year, and basically said he succeeded enough in the slot last year that he'd be candidate to go back outside, and there wouldn't be an issue with that. Which I think, if he's in New England, probably what you'd be looking at is Matt Collins or Kayshon Boutte kind of as your X, Stefon Diggs as your flanker, with Pop Douglas in the slot, and then Kendrick Bourne's your wide receiver 4 behind Diggs as an outside guy. I think that's probably how that breaks down. And then, Jalen Polk, your backup slot. I think
also,
that's
Josh McDaniels historically, you don't play one of the receiver positions. You do it all. I need you to play all three. So Diggs is he's uniquely qualified for a McDaniels offense because he essentially played in the McDaniels offense last year. It's not the same thing, but it's the same tree, right? They've got similar coaches. They've got coaches on that staff who come from the McDaniels tree. So just in terms of what they're asking from the wide receivers, he's done it, and we've seen him do it. He did it in Buffalo when Daboll was the offensive coordinator. He came from the Patriots tree. So in terms of fit, I don't think there's any question that he would fit what they're going to ask him to do.
Yeah. I think the question is just when is he going to be ready? Could he? There's guys recover quick. There's a world where he's ready to go in mid-August and he's on the roster week 1. There's a world where he's on the PUP list to start. We're not seeing him until November.
Yeah. Also,
if he does sign,
Stefon Diggs, historically a crazy person. So he might be ready to go by week 1 just
Certainly
because
possible.
he's been attacking the rehab so bad. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
You said before. I'll let you go in a sec, but Keegan, you said this before that he's on that plane to Providence thinking, I'm not the guy I once was. That Stefon Diggs has never once thought that in his
That's
life.
fair.
He's thinking I'm about to prove that I'm still that guy.
Yeah, I think that in the back of his mind, it's a little bit in there, but for sure when he lands and whatever staffer, whatever 23-year-old kid that just graduated college picks him up, he's going to be talking all sorts of shit.
Yep.
That's just Stefon Diggs.
Yep. I agree. All right. So let's go away from a guy that we want the Patriots to sign to a guy the Patriots did not sign, and some questions that it brings up. So Cam Robinson signs today with the Houston Texans, where Stefon Diggs is leaving. And now it brings up questions about what the Patriots are going to do at left tackle. He was the last really kind of viable left tackle available in free agency. I thought he stunk. I think he was, there are arguments that he was fine to good to he's going to be your starting left tackle, guaranteed, whatever they want. I don't know. But to me, at least, it does bring into question. What are the Patriots going to do at left tackle? Because maybe Vidarian Lowe is the guy that they want to start left tackle day one. But I can't imagine that's option number 1. It could be option number 2 or 3, and maybe they will roll into the season with Vidarian Lowe as starting left tackle. But to me, that's not the option that they want to have. So I don't know. I guess then the question is, where do you think they're going? And then, I guess I'll answer the question first. I know I'm posing the question, but I'll answer it first. I think, to me, they're drafting Will Campbell at number 4. Maybe I'll put it the other way. If Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter go in the first 3 picks, Will Campbell is the pick at 4. If they don't, I think they're going to take one of those guys, and they'll figure out the left tackle position at a certain point. But I think at the point is that the Patriots need good players. Those 2 guys are blue chip players. They need great players, and so you draft those 2 guys. I have a hard time picking another guy over Will Campbell, even if he's not going to be the best. Even if he's not going to be the left tackle, I don't know, but I think he's probably could be the 3rd best player in the draft. He's that good as an offensive lineman. So, anyways, Keegan, I'll let you go first. What do you think this points to? And do you think there's any truth to the fact that, because you hear different things, some people say they weren't interested in Cam Robinson. Some people say they were interested in Cam Robinson. So I'm curious about what you thought there.
And this is not me being tapped in insider, because I'm not. From what I've heard from very non-important people, but people who know things nonetheless, didn't even approach it, really. They called, and I think this was probably like 3 weeks ago at this point. It was early off season before they were supposed to be calling, probably. And they found out what the number was going to be, and they said, no thanks. And it's been out of sight, out of mind kind of thing, because it just never made sense. He had the worst pass rush win rate or blocking rate of any starting offensive tackle in the NFL last year. 17% of rushers he lost. That's abhorrent. That's terrible. It's not good.
It's like twice the league average.
The league average was 8.7. So yeah, it's almost exactly twice.
Counterpoint, they just signed the center who lost 12% of his one-on-one block. So maybe they're into guys like that.
So, and that's another thing, if you want to talk about like scheme and how that plays into it. Both guys come from Minnesota. That's not a coincidence, and neither one of them had numbers that bad before they played the Kevin O'Connell offense. It's just kind of the way they expect their offensive linemen to do things. But nonetheless, I don't think they were interested in Cam Robinson at all. Especially at what they believed the number was going to be. That number dropped drastically, I would imagine. I don't know for sure, but the fact that it only ended up being like $12 million, people were talking about 20 at the beginning of the offseason. So that's the difference there. With what they're going to do moving forward, if Travis Hunter's available, you take Travis Hunter. I believe in that. I will until, my dying breath. I think Travis Hunter's the best player in this draft. So you take him if he's available. And then I think it's a real question of whether or not you stick at number 4 and you take Will Campbell, because Will Campbell will be available at number 4, or if you trade back and you try to target one of these guys who you know fits the requirements of a left tackle in terms of measurements and who has actually played the position. Because, Armand Membu fits the requirements. He hasn't played the position. He played on the right side. Ariante Ursary is the same thing. He played right tackle at Minnesota. Josh Simmons has been a name that I've floated a few times. That's just me being an Ohio State fan and having watched him and think he's really good. I think he can play left tackle at the next level. And if you can trade back to 10 and take him anyway and then recoup assets to either jump back into the first round or get a first-round pick next year, I think that's a smart way of doing business because then you open up all sorts of opportunities. So if I had to rank them, I would go 1, take Travis Hunter if he's available. 2, trade back and be bold and try to recoup assets and, approach this like it's a multiple-year rebuild. And then number 3, which I still don't think is a bad option, just take Will Campbell if he's available because he's a good offensive lineman. And worst-case scenario, you've got an all-pro left guard for the next 10 years.
Right.
I going back to the the Cam Robinson part of this, I was definitely in the if he's going to cost that much money, I'm out based on the production. Once we got to the the price point of him being under $15 million, I was very much interested. That was something I thought they should have been in on. But I think this is where we have to remember he also has connections to what the Patriots are right now. And he worked with Doug Marrone before. That can work for a player. It can work against a player. I'm going to guess that knowing him as well as they did internally, if they're relying on their guys in the building to help them find new players to add to the roster, then they're doing the same thing to say, hey, we didn't really want that guy. So I'm guessing they know something we don't, detail-wise about why he wouldn't be a fit in the building, and that's why they didn't want to take that chance because we're talking not drastically different sums of money for Stefon Diggs or Cam Robinson. I think that's if it's Patriots get to sign one of these two, I don't think they're that dissimilar. They're both guys who I think have had their best play behind them, who might have locker room issues, who you're signing to a cheaper deal than they would usually sign, hoping to get better play out of them, both at positions of need. So the fact they're in on one and not on the other, I think says a lot about, what they think of those specific players. We'll see, though, because if they don't pick left tackle this offseason and Cam Robinson plays well for the Texans, there's going to be a lot of questions being asked. As for the draft, I agree. If it's Travis Hunter, you just run that pickup. Don't think twice about it. I think I lean more Armand Membu here at 4 if you got to take a tackle. I love the athleticism. I love the production. I think he can play left tackle. If I'm the Patriots, I'm not making this pick without bringing him in for a visit and working him out at left tackle to confirm, some of this stuff. Have him work with Doug Marrone for a couple of minutes.
Hey, block Keon White for 10 minutes. Let's see how you do.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, remember that guy Milton Williams we threw money at? Have fun.
Yeah.
Do something like that. But if he passes the test, I think I would take him. And, the worst case with him, Morgan Moses is an older guy. If Membu doesn't work out year 1 at left tackle, you can kick him back over to right tackle and still have a young tackle you really like. And, maybe you move on from Moses and you're still looking for left tackle, but at least you have a long-term solution at one of your tackle spots.
Yeah.
Membu's a guy where I don't necessarily think he played right tackle because he couldn't play left tackle. I think he might have played over there because guys coming into college, every offensive tackle in the NCAA played left tackle in high school. That's just the way it works. Or they bulked up from playing tight end or whatever, and they decided to play tackle. Some guys can make the switch to the right side. Some guys can't. Just like some guys can make the switch from right tackle to left tackle. There's a chance that Membu played right tackle because he was the most athletic option they had, and he was the only one who could actually move to the other side. And they had guys who could only play left tackle.
I don't think that because Membu didn't play tackle in high school. Membu played guard in high school.
Right. Well, that's my point.
He was a right guard, so that's why I think he just stayed on that
point
side.
In general is just he was athletic enough to make a switch. Right. He made the switch from guard to tackle, but
Yeah.
A guy, I don't know who their left tackle was. I'm not going to pretend that I know who the Missouri Tigers were trotting out there at left tackle, but it might have been a case where that kid couldn't play the right side.
Yeah.
And it made sense to just leave him there. Maybe he's younger and they thought we can have him play here longer because Membu's going to be out in 2 years. As soon as he's ready to hit the NFL, he's going to go. So that's an aspect. I don't know it for sure, but I just think like when you're looking at guys, he can't make the change. He can't do this. He can't do that. Maybe guys he played with couldn't, and he was forced into doing something for the betterment of the team. That's all conjecture and hypotheses, but there's a chance that was the case.
Yeah, and we'll see. We'll really see ultimately where they go. But I think what we're looking at this point is a reality of the Patriots are not fixing their left tackle in free agency. Right now, will they take a shot at a low, a cheap money option at left tackle? Sure. Maybe they'll sign Tyron Smith. Maybe they'll sign, I'm sure they'll bring another guy on to play left tackle. I think that's fine. But again, for me, it's one of those issues where the Patriots are going to try to fix this in the draft, whether that's at 4, whether they trade back to 10 and try to fix it at 10, whether they, I don't know, draft a guy at 38 or trade back into the first round to draft that guy. But, maybe it's Simmons, like you mentioned, from Ohio State. Maybe it's, I think Simmons would be in contention for one of those guys that would be going in the top 10, if not for the injury last year. So it's one of those situations. I think the biggest issue that I have, and I don't want to get too far into the draft because we have other things to talk about, and we're going to talk about Matt's mock draft after the ad break. But I think one of the biggest issues that I have is that if you're at 4 and Hunter and Carter are both gone, why is someone willing to trade up to 4 with you? Like, why are you moving from 9 to 4 or 10 to 4 if, now maybe someone falls in love with Shedeur Sanders. Maybe not someone at 10, whoever's at 10 falls in love with Shedeur Sanders and says, we have to have Shedeur Sanders, and that guy's our guy, and we're moving up to do it. Maybe that's a possibility. But, outside of that, I don't see why someone's doing it. And so, that's just my personal opinion, at least.
A little note on the Mizzou offensive tackle situation. It looks like they had a 5th-year transfer come in last year. It was a longtime left tackle from SMU.
Sure.
And Membu was a kind of late breakout. Not late, but he didn't break out until this past season. So it seems like they thought, okay, we'll continue him at right tackle and go get a guy out of the portal to play left tackle. And he wasn't good enough at right tackle to consider making the switch going into last season, and then he dominated all year long. So
there you go.
That explains that.
There you go. All right. How about that? All right. Should we do an ad break and then we'll come back and Matt, we can talk about maybe your mock draft or a few other things as well.
Yeah. Sounds good.
All right, cool. And of course, this ad break, clearly, obviously, as you all should know at this point, is going to be about our guys over at Prize Picks. Now, Prize Picks is America's _1 fantasy sports app. Okay, a daily fantasy sports app, I should say. It is. Why can't I pull it up? What is going on here? That's really annoying. Okay, I apologize. So, anyways, here we are. Here we go. Sorry about that. I got a little lost in translation here. Couldn't pull it up. But nevertheless, 10 million members, billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on more than 30 states, including California, Texas, Georgia, and of course, Massachusetts. They're absolutely easy to use. To create a lineup, all you have to do is pick more or less on a few players on their stats for your shot to win up to 1,000 times. And again, that's 1,000 times your cash. One of the things I like about Prize Picks most is that you actually can choose from different sports. So you can choose basketball and baseball and hockey all at once. And you can even choose like League of Legends and esports as well. So some really cool things as well. So Listen, get on to Prize Picks. Download the app today. Download it. Put in the promo code CLNS. When you play your first $5 lineup, you're going to get $50 instantly. You don't have to play. You don't have to win your lineup. You just have to play it. So again, download the Prize Picks app. Put in the promo code CLNS, and you're going to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Okay. It's not the cleanest ad read, so I wrote that. Prize Picks. Apologize. But you know what are you going to do?
Do we want to? Because we still have another ad break we have to get to. We got two.
That's true. So do you want to start? Do you want to look at your mock draft?
We
can do that, or we can talk about. There are a couple other things I thought were interesting.
All right, so let's get to because there are a few other things. You're right about that. So let's do that. So you want to talk about Bradbury first?
Yeah, we can quickly. We kind of mentioned it.
Garrett Bradbury signed. We kind of talked about the. We discussed the David Andrews thing when it happened first. They let David Andrews go. It was a failed injury, failed physical designation. I just didn't love the way it happened. And then they signed Garrett Bradbury. I don't know. He's fine. He's not great. He's fine. It's just kind of frustrating to see Andrews go out the way he did, and then you bring in another center who's like not that good. It's a little frustrating, if I'm being honest with you.
If I can be the guy who doesn't have the fan hat on, they got a guy who is younger, who is more athletic, and who isn't coming off of a major injury. I think it was due diligence by a team who was looking to get younger and get more athletic and have guys who aren't coming off of injuries, to be honest with you. I had no problem with the fact that they did it. I will agree with the whole celebrating his career like he retired. Very odd.
Yeah.
Just if you're going to release a guy, just release him. Be normal about it. You are no longer a fit here. Your services are no longer needed. We wish you the best of luck. The day you retire, we'll celebrate you. But for right now, the Patriots have released David Andrews. Would have been fine. I don't love the, community service video and the thank you David Andrews posts on Instagram. They had 9 of those. That was very odd to me. But in terms of just the move itself, I think it made perfect football sense.
Yeah, I thought the timing was weird too. If you're going to release him with the intention of, letting him get a job elsewhere, just do it, a week earlier than he did it. Either do that or bring him into camp. Don't do the weird middle ground. But when David Andrews was on the roster, I thought there was a very decent chance he was not going to be the starter week 1 based on the questions around his health. And with Garrett Bradbury on the roster, I'm not certain that Garrett Bradbury is going to be the starter week 1, given his history. Cole Strange has been adequate as a lineman in the past. Maybe he plays center. Ben Brown had some flashes last year, and maybe he's a guy who improves. Jake Andrews was someone that, they liked as a center. This organization liked the center at one point. And then you can always just take the field and say, someone they draft or another person they sign is going to end up filling that role. None of these guys are great. You got to have somebody who play the position this year. Also, I do think Drake May is probably going to call the protections this year. So that center spot probably won't be as important to the workings of the offense. It'll be more of a strictly blocking role. And as a blocking role, it's the least important spot on the line. So, I don't know if they have Bradbury and the other 3 younger guys fighting for 2 spots on the roster, and 2 guys go out there and 1 sticks on the practice squad, and you just kind of rotate throughout the year and hope one of them sticks. That's kind of fine with me for a season. And if it doesn't work, you can pivot the year after.
Yeah.
I think you got a guy who kind of fits the roster construction right now. Michael Onwenu at right guard is a massive human being. Layden Robinson is a friggin' animal at left guard. If he ends up being the left guard, who knows if they want to draft somebody or replace him. But he looks like he's going to be the left guard, at least this year. And then Bradbury in between them is a really, really good athlete at the position. Not just a better athlete than a 32-year-old coming off an injury, but a guy who, testing out all the starting centers in the NFL, is among the top of that list. So roster construction, I think it makes more sense too. And then it's also a 2-year deal. So whether or not he becomes the full-time starter for for both of those years, you're at least putting yourself in a spot where Drake May can get some familiarity with the center. Hopefully he can work with him for the long term, and it's not just a stopgap for 1 year. Worst case scenario it is, and you have to draft a guy to replace him long term. But like I said earlier, I think football-wise, it just makes the most sense. David Andrews was a great Patriot. He hasn't been consistently available to you in 3 of the last 5 years. You have to move on at that point. It makes logistical sense.
And it's a Belichick move. Move on 1 year too early rather than 1 year too late.
I would argue they were a year too late on Andrews. I think if they would have just committed to Cole Strange last year as their center, obviously it was difficult. He was coming off the injury, and who knew when he was going to be ready. But if they allowed him to prepare as a center coming into off the injury, where they didn't, they had him playing guard, and then they eventually transitioned him because it was getting ugly there at the end of the season. I think they probably should have moved on much earlier, in my opinion.
That's fair. That's fair.
He's gonna hate me, by the way. If they re-sign him, or if he becomes a coach and he sees me, he's gonna punch me because nothing. I'll say this: the nicest guy in the world. They lost this offseason the 2 nicest human beings in the locker room, in my opinion, and Dietrich Wise and David Andrews, and then a guy who was as decent to the media as anybody, in Jonathan Jones. So in terms of changing the way things happen in that locker room, it's going to be very different this year.
Yeah.
One, I think, is something we talked about previously, but sometimes when it's you need new leadership to come in, it was clear this locker room needed new leadership, and I think to a degree, sometimes you have to do out with some of the old to make room for that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you out. It doesn't mean that they were bad leaders. They're just, you need somebody to spout the message of your current coaching staff, not your old coaching staff.
It's fair.
Yeah.
It's a fair point.
I had one other thing on the agenda before we get to the mock, because I really wanted your thoughts on this. The Detroit Lions have proposed a rule change. They want it to the playoffs are just seeded based off of record, and division winners are not guaranteed home games in the playoffs anymore in that first round. I have my thoughts on it, but I can go last on this. I don't know which one of you wants to go first, but what do we think about that?
Do you want me to go, Pat?
Yeah.
Winning your division should mean something. And I understand we've had years where, the NFC South back, 5-10 years ago, when a team with a losing record would get into the playoffs, they'd host a playoff game. We have it every few years, depending on the division. I still think it should mean something. And I think, those end of season games between the Giants and the Jets the Giants and the Cowboys, back in 2014. And it was these 2 teams stink, but whoever wins this game is going to host the number 1 seed in terms of
49ers at the Seahawks,
the wild card. The Saints Seahawks game, the Marshawn Lynch game, was a barely 500 team hosting I think they were 11-6, maybe the Saints that year.
I think it was a 10-6 Saints team and a 7-9 Seahawks team. I believe.
And having the home field advantage won them a playoff game, and I think it should mean something. I feel the same way in baseball. Baseball's tried to change this rule 4 times in the last 10 years. Somebody's proposed it, and it's made it far enough for us to hear about it. No thanks. Keep the rules the same. It's not a real issue, in my opinion. I'm sure one of you is going to come back and be the other way on this one, but I just let teams win their division and host a playoff game.
I couldn't hate this more. Couldn't hate it more. Absolutely. I mean, it just why and Burley says get rid of the divisions. I think that's an incredibly stupid idea. But why even have the divisions? If you're just gonna seed people wherever they land, just have them play a random schedule. Don't have them play the people in their division. Just have them play a random schedule with no one else. Because why does it matter? And and that's one of those things for me that where it's you want to, I don't know. It means something. It means something. Winning your division means something. And regardless of anything else, it should mean something. It should mean you get a home game. And if that means you're a 7-10 team that gets a home game, fine. Whatever, dude. But that's the way it works. And then sometimes you're going to have a division like last year in the NFC North where everyone was good. And you end up, the really, really good team ends up as a 5 seed. Win your division. Just win your division. That's all it comes down to.
Yeah, I think you guys are 100% spot on. So we're unanimous in this one.
Love it.
I don't know. I feel like sports are about we need to get back to sports being about fostering hate a little bit here, and the Lions doing this to stick up for their division rival. It seems like they got what are we doing here? This is supposed to be something that drives a rivalry between the Lions and the Vikings in the NFC North. You should hate finishing second in your division, having to go on the road to play a bad team, put yourself in a worse position. That makes these things more important. You guys are saying, that's the fun part of this. Is high stakes rivalries that then drive that interdivision hatred. Isn't that what the whole thing's all about? I'll go one step further on this to another sport. People hate the hockey playoff system. I absolutely love it. I love the fact that in hockey you have to the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, you play the teams from your division. I love that. Every single year you have to face a team that really, really well right away. And all season long, this is the team we're going to have to get through. What fosters hatred better than that?
Right.
And I think the NFL playoff system was perfect when it was 6 teams. I would just go back to that. But if we're doing 7, yes, this is the optimal setup. Don't touch a thing.
Yeah. And I think too, now you're getting into what is the roster, or what does the schedule look like? Who are you playing against? All of those different things, right? And I think that, this team finished 7-9 and won their division. And maybe the division wasn't good. Obviously, it's easy to win the division, yeah. But so what? What difference does that make? And who were the teams that they played outside of their division? What did those teams look like? And now are we going to do some tiebreaker stupid thing where it's your record may not have been good, but I played the Steelers and beat them, and you played the Steelers and lost. And so now it's just why are we no, you win your division, you get a home game, period. So I will say the Lions also proposed something that I love, which is getting rid of defensive holding and illegal contact being an automatic first down. I love that. I think it would be I think it's a fantastic idea. You're talking about 3rd and 15 or 3rd and 25, and there's a defensive holding call, and you get an automatic first down on it. I hate that. Hate it, hate it, hate it. And so I would love for them to fix that. I don't think they're going to change it, but I think that would be great.
I agree. I also hated the ban the tush push rule. Be a man and defend it. We're not banning rules because they're tougher and stronger than you. It's football. That's ridiculous.
I will say I have been, more against the tush push, but it's not I don't think it should be teams can't stop a thing. I just have I remember growing up in football, it's you just can't push players from behind. So for me, that's always a thing that it's not part of football. And I feel okay, that's a rugby play. It's cool. I like it. It's a great show of strength. Is it a football play? Maybe not. I like watching it. I think it's fun. I think it's really funny when it fails, which again, fostering hatred, what we're all about here. But
there are if every team that had an advantage gets that advantage taken away, then what are we doing? Right. Let's just hit the reset button on Madden and all teams are even. That makes no sense. They drafted a quarterback who squats 700 pounds and they have a stumpy, or for a long time, they had a stumpy center who could get underneath everybody. And they've got behemoth human beings playing guard. They've got strong ass running backs and big tight ends. They built their team for this play. And you're going to take it away? That's insane. That's an asinine decision, in my opinion.
And I think,
I wouldn't be I love it would in no way be on competitive grounds. I love the fact that the Eagles found this and found a use for their quarterback and said this is something that we can do and win on. That part is awesome. The way it changes the way their entire offense gets to play is so cool. Also, if you're a Patriots fan and you hate that rule, your team skirted the rules for 20 years, so you don't get to right. They literally beat up the Indianapolis Colts because they were crybabies. They did the same thing to the Rams in the Super Bowl in 2001.
Yep.
They were just more
And
physical.
in 18.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, Bill Belichick said, okay, if within 5 yards I can beat up the wide receiver, I'm going to have Willie McGinnis cover Isaac Bruce, and he's going to mug him at the line of scrimmage, and he's never going to get into his route. It's understanding the rules, and it's taking advantage of them to your benefit. I see no issue with that. Every sport does it. There are basketball teams that do it. There are baseball teams that do it. There are hockey teams that do it. I have no problem with it.
Yeah, I think I don't mind the tush push. What I think gets stupid is like when the running back gets stopped and then he gets pushed by 4 guys on the offense and like the running back is off the ground, like he's literally not even touching the ground and they're just carrying him another 6 yards. And it's just like, we're not even doing anything now. He's just in the air and you're pushing him. It's stupid. And so
Disagree. Get him on the ground.
Yeah, but they lifted him off the ground. He's not even touching the ground. Like
Get him on the ground. We're tackling
it is
people.
the
We're
whole
not picking
point.
people up.
I don't feel that strongly about this either way. To be honest, I will say going back to the illegal contact thing, I do feel strongly that we should get rid of the automatic first. I think less defensive penalties in general should be the automatic first because, like, if it's 3rd and 15 and you've got an illegal contact 7 yards down the field on the backside of a play where the receiver's never going to get targeted and you're moving the chains on that, no, come on.
Right.
What are we doing here?
I agree. By the way,
in theory, I would love to go back to some of the old rules, like when the face mask had a 5 and a 15-yard variant.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we actually trust officials to like that's going to open up a whole can of worms with people tweeting out clips of, can you tell which one of these were 5-yard penalties and which one of these were 15s?
I agree.
Or which ones were automatic first and which ones weren't? And that's going to just open up more headache than is necessary for this.
I agree. By the way, James, totally right here. Ellen went out with all the tush push because I had Barkley on my fantasy team last year. Listen, Saquon Barkley had an incredible fantasy year, but lost out on a whole lot of touchdowns.
As somebody who lost $500, I didn't bet $500. I want to make that abundantly clear. A parlay that would have won me $500 if Saquon Barkley scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl. I still love the tush push. That's the game, folks.
Fair.
Know what team you're betting on. Know what player you're drafting. I love forcing people to adapt. I think that's what sports are all about. Like put your opponent in a tough situation. Let's not take away these advantages that these teams have.
So you think, to be clear, like you're okay with teams, pushing the rules, even skirting the rules at times to try to win?
Absolutely. If you ain't
Just
cheating, you ain't
making
trying,
sure.
man.
What was that?
If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. That's what I've always said.
All right. As a Michigan fan, I just wanted to get that on record from an Ohio State fan.
I had no problem with Michigan cheating. The fact that they got caught and there was no repercussions for it, that's an issue. A conversation for another day. If you can cheat and not get caught, go for it.
Yep. I agree.
That's part of the game.
All right, let's get into Matt's mock draft. This mock draft is going to be before we do, you got to do the game time read, right?
Yeah, I'll talk about game time real quick. Pay the bills, and we'll be back and preview a little mock draft. All right, you guys know what I'm here to talk about. It's basketball season. March Madness is here. NBA is really getting into full swing, getting closer to the playoffs. And with Game Time Picks, you can see your favorite teams play live. Even easier, Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. If you're listening to this podcast, you might be up in New England somewhere. This Friday, the NCAA tournament is going to be in Providence, Rhode Island. I think it's also on Sunday. You can go to Game Time right now, find those games. You're going to hit the Game Time Picks button. You're going to hit the all-in pricing button. What that's going to do, it's going to remove all the tickets from the map that you weren't thinking about anyway. So it's just going to show you the ones you want to see, and it's going to show you the price that you're going to have to pay for those tickets, including the fees and everything. Makes it super easy to buy tickets. I use it all the time. It's super handy. You can click on the map and see what the view is going to be from your section, so you know what you're getting yourself into. I highly recommend you check it out, and we got some great basketball coming to Providence this weekend, and obviously plenty of great basketball up at TD Garden for hopefully from now until June. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
All right. Love it. Love it. All right, before we get into this, Howie R asked a question here. If the 49ers offered pick 11, 43, and next year's round 3 for number 4, would you do it? Now, assuming that Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter are both off the board. Clearly, we're not trading number 4, obviously, for that package if those guys are off the board. But are you willing to make that deal to go back to 11 for 43 and next year's 3rd for number 4? What do you think?
Matt, go first. I have to look at the draft order real quick.
Matt, you there?
Okay. I would first push them and see if I could make next year's pick a second round. If they wouldn't budge on it, I think I'd probably say yes.
Okay, so we'll go 5 through 10 here. Jacksonville, Vegas, the Jets, Carolina, New Orleans, Chicago. I'm looking at how many of those teams need an offensive tackle more than others. Everybody needs an offensive tackle, but how many are truly in contention to take one? I think San Francisco would be. I think if they're trading up, they're probably trading for Will Campbell, or maybe they go crazy style and they draft one of the other tackles. But in terms of what they need, I think that's probably there. Yes, but only for the fact that you got to be a gambler sometimes, and you have to take advantage of the fact that you have a second round pick this year. You have 2 third-round picks this year. I would also push, like Matt said, give me a second next year, not a third. But at 11, I trust that they would be able to get a real difference maker. Whether it's at a spot that they need one is a different question. But if you can get a really good player and you can obtain draft capital this year and next year, I'd go for it.
Yeah. And I can see it. I think just using the Rich Hill draft chart, because that's the draft chart I like to use.
True Pat's pulpit guy.
Yeah, it is a fair trade. Just buy it. As a matter of fact, 11 and 43 themselves actually is like 5 points above what number 4 is. And so then you add in that 3rd round. And again, I would love to make it a 2nd round pick, but even if they left it as a 3rd round pick, I think that I would probably still do it. Again, if I'm sitting there at 4 and I'm saying it's Will Campbell or it's this trade, well, then maybe I move back to 11 and I draft, I don't know, a wide receiver. I'll draft, Tyler Warren.
I think this is the range, assuming the medicals check out in a good way. This is where you start thinking about Josh Simmons.
Right.
If Josh Simmons is there, I'm taking him immediately.
Yeah, if Campbell and Membu are off the board, then which I assume they probably would be, then Josh Simmons is someone you are very seriously thinking about.
And then I think what you could do is you could then turn around and trade 43 and 38 and try to move back up into the 1st round. And that will get you into the early to mid 20s, right? I mean, you're looking at 38's 157 and 138. So what? 280, 295. 295 gets you all the way up to 17, 18, right? And so, that for me is one of those situations where, you can now turn around and then all of a sudden that one trade, yeah, you're drafting later, of course, but 2 picks in that 11 to 20 range. And you can get Josh Simmons and Jaden Higgins or whatever the case may be. And so, that's the way I look at it, at least, is that you can turn those 2 2nd round picks into another 1st round pick to potentially get you the guy that you want, another guy that you would want.
Or have just 2 picks there and, in that 30-40 range. And, you can grab a really high quality guard and a wide receiver, grab 2 guys on the line of scrimmage on defense. You got a lot of options. Or, if there's just somebody who falls, and maybe it isn't necessarily a position of need, maybe there's a corner there who falls to you. You're like, we weren't planning on taking him, but he's just the best guy on the board right now, and we'll take him and figure out the rest later. Now we got 3 corners we really like in the
Yeah, agreed.
Draft is super interesting too in the 2nd round, where it's deep at tight end, at running back, at defensive tackle. cornerbacks, it's a question on whether or not you like small, speedy cornerbacks, but if you do, it's deep there too. So all positions that provide value for the Patriots or are positions of need. So if as many second and third round picks as you can get, I think it's smart business because you could just start throwing darts at the dartboard with positions of need or of value.
Agreed. And Nelson, I mean,
yeah,
I
come on.
think Luca
Booker
Bird stinks personally. I like Emeka Buka, and any of those big slot receivers, I'll take them. You know, Jack Besh, guys like that in the second round, give them to me.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right.
Should we do my
Let's
my
do it.
monster?
Let's do it.
We're running long, so I'll get through this quick. No trades in this mock. We're just keeping it keeping it simple in this one. Decided to go Keagan, you might not know this. We try to have different picks with every one of our mocks.
Sure.
So leads to a lot of variety at the top, especially this year. My first pick in this one at number 4. We're gonna say that Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter off the board, and this team has decided that neither of Will Campbell or Armand Membu is someone who can play left tackle. That's kind of the caveat here. Tedero McMillan, wide receiver, Arizona. It's interesting because I kind of made this pick when I was writing this up, and like immediately after saw some stuff about that's a harsh thumbs down.
I'll give my opinion later.
I wonder what he's going to think. There were someone was saying that the NFL is not nearly as high on McMillan as the league is, which I thought was interesting. But I think McMillan moves really, really well for his size, not just overall speed, but quickness in and out of breaks. He's got a really big catch radius, make plays on the ball, can be a safety blanket type, type of receiver where it gives May an option to someone to just say, I'm just going to throw it in his direction and trust that he can make a play on the ball. So, yeah, that was kind of the thinking there. Keagan, I think you have the biggest opinions here, so I don't know how you go.
Matt, do you know how many 6'4" wide receivers that weigh under 225 pounds have made the Pro Bowl?
Ooh, I bet you it's 0.
I'm going to guess it's 0. Yeah,
it's 0.
How many pounds under 225 does McMillan weigh?
217. Something.
What the hell was Randy Moss? He couldn't have been. He couldn't have been much over 225.
And if not, then the stat is wrong. I saw it somewhere else. I didn't.
Moss was 6'4", 210, and you said over 6'4", right?
Yeah, over 6'4".
That's
under 200.
That's the caveat.
So that might be the caveat. But like in terms of like 6'5" guys we're talking about who had success in the NFL, Calvin Johnson, like Vincent Jackson is up there with the most successful. I think Julio Jones was 6'5", but he was like 230. You need to be a physical freak. Also the Ted McMillan stuff about Jordan Schultz tweeting out he ran a 4.47. No, he didn't. He ran like a mid 4.5s, which is, I know it sounds ridiculous. It's a tenth of a second. That's a huge difference when you're talking about a wide receiver in the NFL. So I don't trust the history with Ted McMillan. I understand that he looks really good on tape. Like every time I watch him, I'm like, it's pretty impressive. It's the history is there, and guys like that don't find success. Even Drake London, who I would say is a decent wide receiver. He's not a superstar. I wouldn't say he was worth the pick that he was taken with. Like that's as close as you can get to a recent example of a guy who's around that size. It's going to be taken in the first round and the success that they'll have.
Yeah.
I believe he's only 6'2".
That's wild. Plays like he's 6'4".
I also know he was like 230. He was gigantic.
Yeah.
6'3", 220. So still just a massive human.
Yeah. I look, I don't love Tet myself. I don't think that I would not be happy with the pick at 4 if it were him. With that being said, if the Patriots looked at it and said he's the clear wide receiver 1 and we think that he can really, he can be the guy for us, and we think that he can bulk up maybe a little bit as well for some of those contested catches, I don't know. Sure. I also thought I'm also of the camp that Vincent Jackson was wildly overrated. And so like I never liked Vincent Jackson. So like that doesn't help in this situation either. Because someone asked who was it? Boss GM asked if Ted is Vincent Jackson, is it a win at 4? And in my opinion, it isn't, because I just didn't love Vincent Jackson. But maybe it is. Maybe I'm being unrealistic. But nevertheless, I don't love him. I don't love him at 4, especially. I don't know.
Also, Drake London was 6'4", 213. Tet's 6'5", 217. That's not a significant difference in size. Drake London had almost 1,300 yards last year with whatever is left of Kirk Cousins throwing him the ball, and then a rookie, Michael Penix. So, like...
Yeah, that offense was also just designed to get him open, so...
Well, then he executed.
Yeah.
Like, no, he was good enough. And I found the stat, by the way. 6'4" plus over the last 25 years. The only 6'4" plus wide receivers who even made a Pro Bowl: Mike Evans, Calvin Johnson, Brandon Marshall, Vincent Jackson, and Marcus Colston. So even the height thing, taking the weight out of it, aren't a lot of guys on that list. And at number 4,
to be honest, I don't think there's a lot of guys who were 6'4" and up who have the ball skills necessary to play wide receiver in the NFL, who also either haven't switched into basketball or to tight end. Like there's some limitations on that, but like so people make the Drake London comp for Tetairoa McMillan. I honestly see more Mike Evans there. He's not as dominant in contested catch situations, but like they're both guys, especially if you look at the numbers, where they'll have really good like dominant reps in contested catches, and then some of the weirdest drops you've ever seen. People forget that Mike Evans has always had a little bit of a drop problem because the good catches he makes are so good.
Wide open across the middle, you can never trust him to make the catch. He'll drop it every time.
Yeah, and like McMillan does some of the same stuff, but he's also like I just don't see many athletes like that who like it's to be a good receiver in the NFL, you have to be quick enough to get open. Even if you're big, like you have to be able to separate and have a little bit of room. And there's not a lot of guys who are that tall who have the ability to do it. And I think McMillan, he already has the ability to do it at the college level, and I think he has the physical tools to do it at the NFL level.
Before we move on, because I do want to credit the person who found those numbers. It's Ben Fennell. He's a producer for a lot of like live NFL broadcasts for CBS. But his points here, and I think they're good points. I think they apply. 6'4", bigger chest and torso. It's a strike zone for defensive backs. Your strides are too long for quick-footed defensive backs. It's harder to sink your hips, obviously, because you're so much higher than the corner. And it's harder to bend and get lower to the ground. So your catch radius, as great as it is above the head, lower, it's not. So if you have a cornerback, which modern cornerbacks are 6'2" and above, the Christian Gonzalez, it's like 6 foot, 6'1", but Patrick Surtain, the top cornerbacks in the NFL, height is not an issue for them. It's whether or not you can beat them on in-breakers, on short intermediate routes. I don't know if he's going to have the success against those DBs. And if you draft him to come to New England, those are going to be the guys he's going up against. That he's going to be the number one priority for opposing defenses.
Yeah, that's a good point. By the way, Nagan is somehow saying that you said Mike Evans is a bad player. That's complete insanity. Mike Evans is a first ballot Hall of Famer.
I don't think he's saying that.
All.
I think he's just saying of the Mike Evans comp that Mike Evans is not a bad player, which
he said if Tet is Evans, that's a win. Like, hello, Mike Evans is a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Like,
also there was a big caveat that Matt said, where Matt said like he's the best contested catch guy we've seen in the last like 15 years.
Right.
Huge caveat there.
That's
his entire game is contested catches in the red zone. So
yeah.
So I do think that my comp for him is like finesse Mike Evans. Like it's Mike Evans who does not play with that level of physicality is not that contested catch guy, which is like a weird comp to make. Like, because that's a guy who you can make a good argument for going top 5 or a good argument for going at 25. I feel like it just depends on how you value those skill sets.
Right. Also, Paper Waves is very upset that I didn't like Vincent Jackson that much. I know Vincent Jackson has died. That's sad. I did not say he's a bad person. I just said I thought he was an overrated player. What's wrong with that? The guy's dead. I'm sorry. It stinks that he's dead. R.I.P. Vincent Jackson. Like, what? Like, okay.
I forget who tweeted it, but I remember the tweet going viral after Stuart Scott died. And it was just like, rest in peace, Stuart Scott. I was never a fan of your on-camera personality. Pat, rest in peace, Vincent Jackson.
Like-
He stunk as a football player.
Like what?
Overrated.
Like, okay, I didn't say he was a bad guy. Just not the biggest Vincent Jackson fan. Sorry.
Now I'm with
Because he
paperweight.
died doesn't make me a Vincent Jackson fan.
Justice for Vincent Jackson.
But anyways, all right. Let's move on because we said we were going to go
doing
quick
a
and we
great
spent
job of
10
that. Yeah, we're
minutes
doing a great job
on the first pick.
All right.
Pat's got kids.
pick-
He's got work in the morning.
I know. I don't. I took off the next 2 days so I can watch March Madness. So I
Very
can keep
nice.
you guys here.
That'd be nice. Must be nice.
Pick 38, left tackle Arante Ursary out of Minnesota. Got some questions about his game. There's a reason he's going to go in the second round, but he's experienced at left tackle. The big dude and great athlete, and I like the upside here, especially at this point in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about Ursary before. He's been one of my mock draft targets as well. Big fan of Ursary. We'll see. It remains to be seen. Whether he can be the guy and certainly step in right away if the Patriots want him to. But at 38, where you're not trading up to get him, I love it here.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's not a second sooner than 38, but that feels about the right spot that he should fall into.
Yeah.
And it's he's 40 on the consensus board right now. Like I've seen him, he's a guy who might end up going a little bit earlier than this if tackles get pushed up. But it also, maybe Connerly falls to here, maybe Simmons falls to here if the medicals aren't as good as people think. A lot of guys could be available in this spot last year. None of those guys we thought were going to be available at this point were. We'll see how the 2025 class goes. Pick 69. Patriots are going back to the wide receiver position. I don't think this guy's actually going to be available in draft night, but according to the consensus mocks, he still is at this point. And that's Jalen Noel out of Iowa State, the speed slot guy. He killed the combine. He's a deep threat, good ball tracking skills. I mean, he's just a good all-around player who really came into his own this past season. And one in the article that drops tomorrow morning, one of the comparisons I made is that Noel worked well off of Jaden Higgins as the bigger receiver across from him, and that dynamic worked out well. And I said, basically set up the same dynamic with he and McMillan in New England, where you got one guy who's your possession intermediate guy in McMillan, ball winner, and one guy who can go over the top of the defense in Noel and let them play off each other with Drake, man.
Yeah, I'm a huge Noel fan. If I could do a quick plug, Patriots draft profiles over at Nesson.com. If you're interested, I've got him there. I'm doing 25 players this year. Jalen Noel was one of them. I compared him to Jaden Reed, and I think that's a high-end comparison. But if you can get Jaden Reed onto your team, you do it any day of the week. I think he's the best slot receiver in the draft. And I think he brings something to the Patriots that they don't have, which is just straight-up speed. Like Pop Douglas is a really good shifty underneath wide receiver. He does not have top line speed. Right. He can't really get away from people the way you would like for a slot receiver to be able to if you throw him underneath and let him get yards after the catch. But Jalen Noel is an upgrade over Pop Douglas. Are you looking to upgrade that specific position? No, but it's enough of one to where I think it would be a good pick.
Yeah. Well, and that's the big thing for me really is that it's not about where he plays, right? Like, sure, he plays slot, and the guy that's there for your slot is arguably your best receiver on the team right now. That doesn't matter. Jalen Noel plays the slot position better or different than Pop Douglas does, and so it doesn't make a difference. They can probably play at the same time if they want.
I'm looking at this mock right now, realizing this goes live tomorrow morning. And there's a real chance that within the first 2 hours of this article being up, the Patriots are going to sign Stefon Diggs and maybe make this part moot. But
whatever. Who cares? Yeah. By the way, Nagan asked the question if Scatabo was in my mock. This is actually Matt's mock that we're talking about this week. Last week, however, if you go back into the Pat's Pulpit archives, Cam Scatabo is in my mock last week at this pick 77. So just,
And my pick at 77, going back to the offensive line, Wyatt Milam out of West Virginia. He played left tackle there. I actually really like his tape at left tackle, but he has all the same issues that Will Campbell does with size. So he's going to kick inside to guard at the next level where I really like him. And left guard is an area of need for New England still. Maybe Cole Strange can be that guy. Maybe Layden Robinson can be that guy. You want to still invest at the position. I like Milam a lot. He also, I think, some people have projected him to center, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know how I feel about that.
That feels like making a move just to make a move. Like,
Yeah,
he's going to be a really good guard. Just leave him at guard.
Right.
Yeah. He's got some size too. So you get your left tackle and your left guard paired together in this draft.
I also did he ever give up a sack in his life? I feel like I saw that stat. He didn't give up one last year. I don't think he gave up a pressure last year. Like he was insane for West Virginia.
And he went. I mean, one of these games he went against Abdul Carter, and Carter gave him some issues, but it wasn't. Yeah, they didn't leave him on an island. Let's see. He had 3 sacks as a freshman, playing at right tackle. Outside of that, as a left tackle, the last 3 years, 0 sacks,
Yeah, that's
1
insane.
hit. Yeah,
That's
1
wild.
hit. In the last 2 seasons as a starter at left tackle, 0 sacks, 0 hits, only 15 hurries. That's 15 total pressures over 2 seasons. Obviously, it's West Virginia here and a slightly tier down conference, but and he just isn't a good enough athlete to do it. And I don't you talk about the profile. I don't think he's going to be on the board at this point. I think he's probably going to go higher than this, but this is where the consensus has him right now.
He feels like the perfect guy to be drafted by a contender, and just he can kind of play wherever they need, like a Patrick McCarry type, where if you need him to fill in at left tackle, he can. If you need him to play center in a pinch, he could probably do that. He can play both guard spots. So I like the pick a lot.
I like it. Big fan.
I was like, his numbers here at the pressures line, that's better than Will Campbell. And I do, obviously differences between the players, but I do find it funny that
SEC versus ACC.
Unlike Milam's a 4-year guy, Campbell is a 3-year guy. There's levels to this, but it is funny that we have the same issue, and one of these guys is definitely kicking inside of the next level, and people are still talking about Campbell like he's a left tackle. I don't think Milam is a left tackle. I don't think Campbell is either, personally.
Right, but all right. Pick 106 here.
We're going
pick 106.
Jared Ivey, edge defender from Ole Miss. He's big. He's strong. Older guy, still a little bit raw as a pass rusher, but he just had his best season. And I think he has the size and profile of someone who fits in this Mike Vrabel defense. One of his issues, he's effort can be a little bit of an issue, or consistency with his pass rush. I think this is a group where you expect them to kind of correct that and work on that. And comes in as a situational player for you, a role player, a rotational guy on the edge, and you hope you can develop into something more. He also played for 1 year with Keon White at Georgia Tech.
Fun fact, I don't know a ton about him. I haven't watched Jared Ivey at all, but getting defensive linemen out of the SEC feels like a decent enough bet. It's never a bad choice. So,
and basketball guy, 6'6", 274. I'll take it. Doesn't have the longest arms ever. But decent pass rush, decent against the run. I'm willing to take him. I'm willing to take a chance at him. Right. And he wins the National Defensive Player of the Week when he plays against Georgia. That's pretty good. You know what I mean? And so again, for me, I look at it and just think that, he's might be a work in progress. He may not be a finished product, kind of like Keon White was when they drafted him, right? He's not as young as Keon White was when the Patriots drafted him, but nevertheless, I think you take a shot. And I'm okay with anytime you're telling me that we can get a guy that is, a freakish type athlete who has an ability to get after the passer, I'm in for it. Especially talking to the 4th round. Sign me up.
Yeah, developmental guy. Keegan, this next pick is for you. 144. Seth McLaughlin.
Oh,
center.
I love that pick.
Ohio State. Yeah, is he going to play this? It seems like to be uncertain if he's actually going to be ready to go because he tore his Achilles at the end of last year.
Also late season. I would imagine whoever's taking him will redshirt him. It doesn't make sense to try to force him out there. But not to step on your toes. Remington Award winner, started 24 games at Alabama, started 10 games at Ohio State, appeared in appeared in a national championship and then won one as a guy on the sideline. Just the perfect kind of guy for the Patriots because they have someone in place. You can have somebody to learn behind him and then be your starter moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong with this.
Yeah. I do think one of the issues with McLaughlin, people might know this name. He was the center for Alabama in the Rose Bowl when they lost to Michigan. Yeah. He was the one with all the bad snaps that messed up Jalen Milroe, which I believe they said was just like a technique issue with how Alabama did it. And he came to Ohio State and it was fixed. That's what I read.
So I don't have a football with me. At Alabama, they had him holding the nose of the football and snapping it because with Jalen Milroe, it's kind of like get it back there as fast as possible to give him as much time to process and read the defense. At Ohio State, he just snapped it like a normal center, 0 problems. So it's just knowing like play football like a normal person, and it works out 9 out of 10 times.
That's weird.
So got to fix that. And I kind of like this for where the Patriots are because you can just kind of let the horde at center figure out who's actually going to play this year and develop and figure that out. And McLaughlin's a super smart player who could probably just slot in as a starter in 2026. So guys are fighting for playing time this year and kind of fighting for the backup job with McLaughlin, for the year after. Sets things up well organizationally. 7th round, 217, Howard Cross, defensive lineman out of Notre Dame. He's a little undersized with short arms, but he moves really well, and he was good for them. I don't know if it's going to translate to the NFL. I don't think anybody really does with his athletic profile, but he's a shifty defensive lineman up the middle. Like you don't see this mole. He's like an undersized nose tackle almost who penetrates well and moves on stunts and games and stuff. I like that for Mike Vrabel's defense in particular.
Good pick. Like you said, undersized, very weird profile. He shouldn't be as good as he is, but he produces. And when you're getting late into the draft on day 3, find guys who produce, who can play situational roles early and then maybe develop into something bigger.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. He didn't really do a ton. I actually went to a Notre Dame game this year. Against Florida State, where they just absolutely decimated Florida State, just embarrassed Florida State.
Worst program in college football.
But he didn't really do much in that game. But he was kind of a guy that can penetrate. This is the type of defensive lineman they're looking for now. So
they had injuries late in the season. Notre Dame, like Riley Mills was their stud guy, and he got hurt. And Howard Cross kind of slid into that role of just being their middle of their defense guy, and they made it to the national championship game, and he produced. He played well while he was injured. So a guy that you want to work with,
Yep, I like it.
Yeah. You're gonna hate this next pick, Keagan. 220, Donovan Edwards.
I mean, come on, you're too easy to read, Matt.
He's got a weird profile because he's known for these big game plays. Like as a freshman in the Big Ten championship, he threw a 75-yard touchdown. This is a running back. He threw a 75-yard touchdown against Ohio State. He had 2 touchdown runs of 75 yards or more in the fourth quarter to ice the game. In the national championship, he had the first 2 touchdowns of the game to essentially win the game for Michigan right out of the gates there. He's kind of a big game player, but his sophomore year was his best season. His junior and senior years were kind of let down. He wasn't the best running back Michigan had on the team in either one of those seasons. He just kind of stagnated. He's a good athlete, just runs upright and can get taken down because of that. He's not the shiftiest, but he was also they played him at slot receiver at points. His receiving production isn't anything crazy, but he can do that. He's an athlete who can do that. So I kind of like the bet on that profile guy at this point.
He's one of those weird guys where at Michigan, he was not their starter like Mullings was because he just fit kind of what they wanted to do more. But I think he's a better prospect than Mullins is, where he's a better athlete. He's more explosive. Like you said, the big play ability is obviously there from multiple spots, from running back and slot receiver. So worth a flyer. I hate the fact that he had 2 big games 3 big games maybe in his entire college career, and he's been living off of that. It reminds me of an Ohio State guy, Trey Sermon, who had the 2 best games of his career at the end of his career and then was a nothing running back in the NFL. He bounced around for a couple of years. He did nothing. And I think they're very similar. They seem very similar to me.
Donovan Edwards was like a cover athlete for college football, all because like he had a bad junior year and then he had 2 touchdown runs in the Natty, and because like I think he was the 3rd running back they used on that drive. He just happened to be the one that ran for the score.
Well, listen, even if you just use him as a receiving back, it's a 7th round pick, right? So if they like him and they think that he has some upside as a receiver, I'm in. What the hell? I mean, it's running back. It's not really an important position in my opinion, but they are looking for a guy that can catch the ball out of the backfield. And if Edwards can fit that role, then by all means.
Yeah. I'm going to get to our last pick in a second, but first, Nagan, because you've been criticizing my draft and bringing things up, you mentioned, why are you sleeping on USC's Jonah Monheim for a late round pick? Nagan, I know you're in the chat all the time. You listen to all of our shows. I took him in one of my mocks already. I can't take him again. That's the way we do this. My second mock. Gotta keep up, Nagan.
Yeah, well, this is what happens. All right. Last pick.
Last 238. I took this guy because I think he's one of my favorite names in the draft. It just rolls off the tongue. Robert Longerbeam, the corner from Rutgers. Did well at the Shrine Bowl. Tested well at the Combine. He's got some good measurables. Just a little small, and his tape's good. Probably better zone corner. I do wonder, him being a little bit small and him not necessarily being the best run defender, if he's going to be even someone they're interested in. But for these day 3 corners, he intrigued me.
Sure.
How about an 11-foot 2-inch broad jump? How about that?
Sure.
Guy's a great athlete. 4.3, 940 with a 1.5 10-yard split. Like, it's pretty solid.
He had
not
a
the biggest guy.
3 cone, right?
He had the 3 cone actually isn't on here. The one I'm looking at least isn't on.
Oh, okay. Because I think he did the 3 cone like later in his pro day or something, and it was like under 7. Yeah.
So there you go. Yeah.
He's
which is solid. Decent athlete. I don't know. Small though. 5'11", 175. He's not a big guy. But what the heck, And again,
I want to root for a Bobby Longerbeam. Like, hell yeah.
I'm a big fan of that. And around Boston, if he makes the roster, there's going to be some guys like, hey guy, look at the back of my shirt here, Longerbeam. What do you think about that?
Can't wait to see the Longerbeam jersey on is it what do you call it? Barth, who does like pictures of people wearing weird jerseys at games.
I got my Bobby Longerbeam jersey on, dude.
You get it? Longerbeam? Get it?
Bobby Longerbeam sounds like a cartoon character.
Kind of does. You're right. So, all right, let's get the hell out of here. It was a good mock draft. We appreciate all of you.
Live tomorrow morning.
Yeah, that's right. Pat's Pulpit live tomorrow morning. We appreciate all of you being here. Keegan, we appreciate you being here the most.
Wow.
We love the people in the chat, but we love you even more, Keegan. And so before you go, please, plug yourself. Let everyone know where they can read you and see you and hear you and everything else.
For now, you can find me on Nesson. My employment will end in May. Have something lined up, so hopefully it won't be too long before I shift all my stuff over somewhere else. But Nesson.com/Keagan Stiefel, on Twitter /X @Keagan Stiefel. I'll be posting Patriots draft stuff, Patriots offseason stuff. Hopefully some fun stuff coming up in the future.
I love it. Hardest working man in show business right here. The guy's just churning out articles like you wouldn't believe.
You would not believe it.
It's unbelievable. So I love it. So, well, anyways, thank you so much for tuning in, people. We appreciate you. And we will talk to you next Monday night. Until then, be good to each other.
We got a guest for that one too. And I'll believe a live mock draft.
Yeah. It's going to be good. It's going to be good these next few weeks. It's going to be a lot of fun leading up to the draft. It's going to be a lot of fun. So anyways, be good to each other and go Pats.